This is Miss Humbert here. Today we're going to be doing Unit 5 Learning Target 6 notes. So today we're going to do an introduction to the quadratic formula. So this is really important that you have your calculator out and that you're plugging things in along with, because it's really easy to make mistakes in how you plug it into the calculator. So first and foremost, let's take a look at these. So we need to simplify these. Okay, so some of these we can do in our head. Well, the square root of 16, that's going to be 4. It's 4 because this 4 times 4 is 16. So the square root of 16 is 4. Negative square root of 25. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the square root of 25 and then we're going to make it negative. So the square root of 25 is 5 and then we're going to make it negative. Next, when you're plugging something like this, the first thing I suggest doing is plugging that exactly into your calculator how you see it written. So 34 minus, notice that that's a subtraction sign, not a negative sign. So you need to make sure you're using a subtraction sign. And then 2 times 3 times 3. And when you do that, you end up with 16. So here we get plus or minus the square root of 16. Well, when you take a square root, typically there's a positive answer and a negative answer. That's why there's plus or minus on the outside. Well, the square root of 16 is 4. So we have plus or minus 4. So that means we could have a positive 4 for our answer or a negative 4 for our answer. Let's take a look at a couple more. So the square root of 49. The square root of 49 is 7. Again, you could type that into your calculator if you want using the square root key. Okay, and then we're going to do, once you take the square root, you don't have to have the square root symbol anymore. So the square root of 49 is 7. So we can immediately go to write 7. And then we have plus or minus 7. So that means our answer can be positive 7 or it could be negative 7. Taking a look at this, you want to simplify this part first. So in your calculator, you're going to type 3 squared minus, and then 4 times 2 times negative 2. So go ahead and type that in your calculator. Pause the video if you need to. When you get that, you end up getting 25. Now we can't take that radical symbol away yet because we haven't simplified it. Well, the square root of 25 is just going to be 5. Okay, so that's your final answer for that one. Let's take a look at those last two. So now we're going to take it a step further. So again, I want you just to simplify this part first. You're going to put that negative 5 in parentheses when you square it. Then you're going to subtract 4 times 1 times 4. And all of that's going to be maintained under the square root. Well, we haven't done anything with that negative 7 on the outside. All we've done is simplified underneath the square root. And when you calculate this part all out in your calculator, you should have gotten 9. So make sure you got 9. If you didn't, backtrack. See where you maybe made a mistake. So the square root of 9 is 3. So then we have negative 7 minus 3. We can't add these two until we get rid of this square root symbol. So when I took the square root, I got 3. Well, now I can combine negative 7 and minus 3. And that's going to give me negative 10 for my final answer for that one. Now taking a look at this one, again, we want to simplify underneath first. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to take a negative 7 and square it. Then you're going to subtract 4 times 5 times 2. And when you do that, you end up with, again, 9 underneath your radical. So we have 11 plus or minus the square root of 9. Well, again, before I can add the 11 to anything, I have to actually take the square root, and I get 3. And then when you take the square root, you can get rid of that radical. So now I'm going to have two things. I'm going to have 11 plus 3, and I'm going to have 11 minus 3. So I'm going to split up that plus or minus. Well, 11 plus 3 is going to give me 14. 11 minus 3 is going to give me 8. So these two right here are your final answer. Now all of this is leading up to solving things using the quadratic formula. So here is the quadratic formula. Okay, the quadratic formula is the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at some things we need to know about the quadratic formula. First of all, this quadratic formula solves quadratics to find roots. Okay, the equation must be set equal to 0. So if our equation is set equal to 0, we can use this to solve. So it's going to be similar. It's a different way of solving what we learned yesterday or on the previous note sheet with the zero product property. It's another way that we can solve things with squared terms. So let's go ahead and take a look at the steps for that. Here are our steps. So first, we need to figure out what A, B, and C are. Once we know A, B, and C, we can plug it into that formula that you wrote on the top page. So if it helps you, write the formula on the back page so you can see it while we're calculating out these problems. Okay, then you're going to simplify. Now remember, we have to look at how we plug things into our calculator. So really all you're doing today is plugging numbers into your calculator, but you need to make sure you know how to do it correctly. We're always going to round our decimal points to 2 decimal places. All right, so let's take a look at that now. So let's take a look at number 1. So let's assign our A, our B, and our C. Well, A is always with the squared term. So A is 3. B is always with the x term. And again, you're going to take the sign with, so that's going to be -7. And C is -20. So we have A, B, and C. So now we're ready to use the quadratic formula. So maybe take a peek at it on the other side of the page. So we have x is equal to. Now on the top it has the opposite of b. Well, since my b is negative, I'm going to make it positive. Then I have plus or minus the square root, again that's from the formula, of b squared. So I'm going to take -7 and I'm going to square it, minus 4. That 4 is a part of the formula. It will always be there. Times a times c. And then all of that, this should be a in here, is over 2. That 2 is part of the formula times a. So all I did was plug in each of those numbers where they showed up in the formula. So now what I want to do first is I want to simplify underneath the radical, just like we did at the beginning of this note sheet. So I'm going to simplify just this part. I'm going to take this chunk and plug it into my calculator. So I'm going to take the quantity of -7 squared minus 4 times 3 times -20. So go ahead and pause the video and plug that into your calculator. When you plug that into your calculator, you should get 289. Divided by, now I'm going to take 2 times 3, which is 6. So now I'm going to show you how you can go about this to make sure you always get the right answer. So we're going to split this up into 2 forms right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a look at my positive version. So I'm going to do 7 plus the square root of 289. So here's what I want you to do in your calculator. I want you to type 7 plus square root 289 and then hit enter. Once you've hit enter, then divided by 6. So once you've hit enter, you're going to take that answer and divide it by 6. And when you do that, you get 4. Then we're going to do that with the minus version. We're going to take 7 minus, okay, the square root of 289. So type that in your calculator. Hit enter. Then you're going to take your answer and divide it by 6. So take your answer and divide it by 6. And that gives you a -1.666. Now we want to make sure we have 2 decimal points. So we look at the third decimal place and that's a 6. That's greater than 5. So we need to round the second number up. So our second answer is -1.67 and our first answer is 4. Let's take a look at another example because I know this can be confusing, so we want to make sure we do as many examples as possible. So let's take a look at this one. So our A, since there's no coefficient with the square term, is 1. Our B is 3, and our C is -18. So now I'm ready to plug this into the quadratic formula. So I'm going to do x is equal to the opposite of b, so that's going to be negative, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times 1 times -18, because it's times 4ac, all over 2 times a. So now again, I want you to simplify underneath this radical. So in your calculator, you're going to do 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times a -18. And when you do that, you should get 81 divided by 2 times 1, which is 2. So now we're ready to create our 2 different versions. So let's do our plus version first. So we're going to do -3 plus the square root of 81. And then you're going to hit enter. Once you've hit an enter, then you're going to divide by 2. And when you do that, you should have gotten 3. So one of your answers is 3. Check to make sure you can do it. Then you're going to do -3 minus the square root of 81. Again, you're going to hit enter, and then you're going to divide your answer by 2. And that gives you a -6. So that's your final answer for number 2 is 3 and -6. Next, let's take a look at number 3. So for number 3, we're going to do opposite of b over 2, or we're going to do our quadratic formula. Sorry, so a is with the squared term, which is 4. B is with the x term, which is 2. And c is the constant at the end, which is a -17. Okay, so now let's plug it into the quadratic formula. So x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times our a times our c. Remember, this initial 4 is always in the equation. And then all of that, there should be a minus and a -17, is over 2a. So again, you want to simplify underneath this radical first. So we want to take 2 squared minus 4 times -4, or times 4 times -17. So we have -2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times -17, which gives us 276. Then 2 times 4 is going to give us 8. So now we're ready to create our plus and our minus version. So let's go ahead and do that. So we do -2 plus the square root of 276. Then in your calculator, you're going to hit enter. Once you've hit enter, then you're going to do divided by 8. And when you do that, you end up with 1.8266. Now again, we want to round it to 3 decimal points. So to round it to, 2 decimal points, to round it to 2 decimal points, we want to take a look at the third number. Well, that's 5 or greater, which means that we need to round this number up. So our final answer then is 1.83. Now that's for the positive version. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at the negative version. So then we have -2 minus the square root of 276. Again, once you type that in, hit enter. Make sure this is a subtraction symbol. Then you're going to take that answer and divide it by 8. And when you do that, you get -2.3266. Again, we want to round to 2 decimal points. So looking at the third number, it's greater than 5, so we need to round this number up. So we get -2.33 as our final answer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this video here, and I'm going to pick up 4 through 6 on the next video. So look for that part 2 video to finish this up.